This is CBN Newswatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN Newswatch for Thursday, December 5th. I'm George Thomas. Today, the Democrats start the second round of their impeachment hearings, calling legal experts who support their position. But one constitutional scholar warns them this is not how you impeach a president. Religious freedom under fire in New York as a new law forces pro-life crisis pregnancy centers and religious advocacy groups to hire workers who actively support abortion. With all the violence, gangs and drugs devastating much of America's inner cities, we'll hear from one ministry's encouraging answer of hope. And Christian activists display the reason for the season in our nation's capital with a live nativity scene. Those stories and much more today on Newswatch. But we begin with the second round of impeachment hearings in Washington. And are you ready? That was the question House Speaker Nancy Pelosi put to her caucus Wednesday before launching into the Judiciary Committee's hearings. But which constitutional scholar warned Democrats they haven't made their case? And how did the president's teenage son get dragged into this mess? My colleague CBN's Jenna Browder has the story from Washington.
The Judiciary Committee opened its hearings with testimony from 4 legal scholars on whether the charges against the president rise to the level of impeachment. Democrats called 3 witnesses. Republicans had 1. Their testimony offered little in the way of surprises.
If what we're talking about is not impeachable, then nothing is impeachable.
The scholars brought in by Democrats say the Ukraine scandal is evidence President Trump abused his power for his own personal political gain, and that he should be impeached.
President Trump's conduct, as described in the testimony and evidence, clearly constitutes impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors under the Constitution.
Republicans were allowed to call one of their own experts. Professor Jonathan Turley made it clear he didn't vote for the president, and while he didn't defend him, he did say Democrats are moving too fast and have not proven their case.
It's wrong because this is not how you impeach an American president. Why you want to set the record for the fastest impeachment? Fast is not good for impeachment.
Some Democrats asked questions referencing the Mueller report, a sign they may broaden impeachment beyond Ukraine. And then there was this moment that went viral.
The Constitution says there can be no titles of nobility. So while the president can name his son Baron, he can't make him a baron.
Let me also suggest that when you invoke the president's son's name here, when you try to make a little joke out of referencing Baron Trump, that does not lend credibility to your argument. It makes you look mean.
The First Lady shot back on Twitter that a minor child deserves privacy and should be kept out of politics. Professor Pamela Karlan later apologized.
It was wrong of me to do that.
Overseas at NATO, President Trump called the hearing boring and criticized its fairness.
They get 3 constitutional lawyers and we get 1. What's that all about? Just that little statement. They get 3, we get 1. We had no representation. We couldn't call witnesses. We couldn't do anything. It is the most unfair thing that anybody's ever seen.
CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody, says Democrats botched the hearing and didn't break any new ground.
And when it's partisan like this, and you want to move public opinion, you can't be more partisan. You have to somehow figure out a way to get more public on your side. They didn't do that.
The White House has until the end of the day to decide if it will participate in any of the next hearings. A full House vote is expected before Christmas, and reportedly the administration is gearing up for a full defense in a Senate trial. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. The impeachment inquiry started with President Trump investigating corruption in Ukraine. But the burning question, who is the Ukrainian executive who hired former Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter? In 2014, with no experience in the power industry, Hunter Biden landed a very lucrative position with a Ukrainian energy firm. Now, the Ukrainian billionaire who hired him is under investigation and reportedly in hiding. Dale Hurd has a story.
Mykola Zlochevsky was once one of the most powerful men in Ukraine. That was before he fled the country, amidst several allegations of corruption. And he's linked to the son of former Vice President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. Zlochevsky hired Biden as director and head of the legal department at Burisma Holdings, Ukraine's largest oil and gas producer, and paid him $50,000 a month, despite the fact that Biden had little to no experience in the energy sector or Ukrainian law. But Biden was the face of Burisma in this company promotional video.
You didn't have any extensive knowledge about natural gas or Ukraine itself, though?
No, but I think that I had as much knowledge as anybody else that was on the board, if not more.
During the impeachment inquiry, diplomat George Kent said Biden's involvement with Burisma, while his father, Vice President Joe Biden, was negotiating with Ukraine, was a cause of concern.
There was the possibility of a perception of a conflict of interest.
And now Hunter Biden is tied to a businessman suspected of embezzling government funds on a large scale. That according to Ukraine's chief prosecutor, who has reopened all past investigations of Zlochevsky on suspicion of unlawful enrichment, abuse of power, and forgery when he was Ukraine's ecology minister. Zlochevsky, as a government minister, was also suspected of providing gas production licenses and permits illegally to his own companies. And there are allegations of tax evasion. But Ukrainian authorities reportedly do not know Zlochevsky's whereabouts. There are reports he's hiding out in Monaco. Hunter Biden may believe he's done nothing wrong, but Mykola Zlochevsky, the man he worked for, is under criminal investigation. An investigation that most likely will not be good for Biden. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Turning to the Middle East, Iran has built up a hidden arsenal of short-range ballistic missiles in Iraq. That's according to the U.S. military and intelligence in the New York Times. The paper reports it's part of Iran's efforts to intimidate the Middle East and asserts its power. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Netanyahu made it very clear that the threat from Iran was at the top of the agenda.
The first subject that I will raise is Iran. The second subject is Iran, and so is the third, and many more. But I think that we have been fortunate that President Trump has led a consistent policy of pressure against Iran. Iran is increasing its aggression as we speak, even today, in the region. They're trying to...
The New York Times points out that if the U.S. or Israel bombed Iran, it could use its missiles hidden in Iraq to strike back. Nearly 2 months ago, Turkey invaded northeast Syria, and that military action has displaced hundreds of thousands of Syrians. And with winter just weeks away, some are warning of a humanitarian crisis. CBN's Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
These are the sounds of the ceasefire in northeast Syria. This battle is in a place called Ain Issa, or the Eyes of Jesus, where jihadist forces backed by the Turkish army attacked a refugee camp.
There's the shooting of the Turks and Free Syrian Army trying to come into Ain Issa. And this is a terrible invasion that has not stopped yet.
It's the latest battle for control of territory in northeast Syria, and more evidence that there's never been a ceasefire since the beginning of the Turkish invasion more than 5 weeks ago. A major leader in the Syrian Democratic Council tweeted, "Turkey is telling the world that it ended the campaign against Tal Abyad and Ras Al Ain to start a new offensive against Ain Issa, its gradual occupation for the entire north." The attack also comes outside the so-called safe zone announced by Turkish President Erdogan. Dave Eubank and his Free Burma Rangers team have been on the front lines and documenting the fighting and the humanitarian crisis.
These are some of the 300,000 people who fled the attack of the Turks and the Free Syrian Army now. Been here almost a month, out in these tents. Now it's very cold.
About 15,000 Syrian refugees have sought refuge inside northern Iraq, while the rest remain inside Syria. But both groups face the upcoming winter cold, where temperatures can get below freezing, in tents that often have no heat, along with the rain and mud. Relief agencies warn some inside Syria don't have clean drinking water, and many need emergency shelter, food, and fuel. It's part of the humanitarian crisis that began with Turkey's invasion in early October. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up here at home, a law in New York forces pro-life crisis pregnancy centers and religious advocacy groups to hire workers who actively support abortion. We'll hear from a religious freedom advocate about how government hostility toward pro-life and religious groups is growing in the Empire State.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. Religious freedom under fire in New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo recently signed legislation that forces pro-life crisis pregnancy centers and religious advocacy groups to hire workers who actively support abortion. On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Denise Harley of the Alliance Defending Freedom says government hostility toward pro-life and religious groups is growing in that state. Take a look.
So, Denise, we saw people cheer with shouts of joy when Governor Cuomo signed a bill last year allowing abortion in New York State right up until birth. Remember that one? Well, now this. Please explain what the new law means for pro-life and religious groups.
That's right. This is the third in a series of very pro-abortion laws that New York has passed this year. This one just comes down to the fact that all Americans are free to live and work according to their beliefs. But what New York has done is decided that the state government is going to force faith-based and religious organizations to hire people that disagree with their pro-life views. And that's unconstitutional.
Well, it seems that this is really advocacy on the part of the state of New York. So pro-life and religious groups were not exempted from this law. Why weren't they exempted?
Because that's who New York was targeting. New York is demeaning religious organizations, churches, and pro-life groups, and essentially saying that your good faith difference of opinion has no business here. And so what they're trying to do is to punish places like our clients, First Bible Baptist Church and Compass Care Pregnancy Center, and forcing them to operate in a way that's not consistent with their values and their core mission. These are charities and churches that affirm life from conception to natural death. And under this law, they are forced to employ people who may advocate for abortion.
Denise, it seems this goes beyond just a violation of religious freedom and freedom of speech and so forth. It seems like discrimination. Is this discrimination?
This is absolutely hostility towards a religious viewpoint. And the Supreme Court has made clear over and over again, including last year in Masterpiece Cake Shop, that the state government cannot express hostility to certain religious viewpoints. The First Amendment protects against that, and that sort of discrimination has no place in our free society.
What are the ramifications then for the rest of the country? How likely might we see similar legislation in other states?
Well, we feel very confident that this law is going to be struck down, and that's what we've asked the courts to do. The First Amendment is completely clear that a state cannot come in and say what a church can say or not say, or believe or not believe, or who a church can associate with. So we think this law is going to fail. But unfortunately, states like New York do try to sort of test the waters and float these sorts of ideas out there. So we're hoping to nip it in the bud and not to see this sort of unconstitutional discrimination towards pro-life viewpoints in a society that needs places like pregnancy care centers to serve and love women and help to encourage them to choose life for their babies.
You said ADF is challenging this law in court. So tell us a little more about that. Does that go to the state Supreme Court in New York or the U.S. Supreme Court? What's the next step?
So we filed a lawsuit in federal district court, and we have also filed for a preliminary injunction, which means we've asked the court to immediately stop the law because on its face, it violates the First Amendment in at least 3 ways. It violates what these organizations can say and not say because it prevents them from even having a moral code of conduct for their organization and for their employees. It violates their free exercise of religion because it prevents them from living out their beliefs by forcing them to essentially endorse and associate with beliefs they don't believe in. And 3, it violates their free association under the First Amendment because it says who they can and can't hire and employ. So those are the grounds for our complaint, and we're hoping for a fairly swift resolution in the federal district court.
Okay, Denise Harley, please keep us posted on how this progresses. You're with the Alliance Defending Freedom. Thank you so much for those insights.
Very well. Thanks, Gary.
Watch for Denise Harley and hear a conversation involving the question, was Jesus a Palestinian? Gary Lane talks to Islam analyst Robert Spencer, who shares his thoughts about that and his new book, The Palestinian Delusion. That's on the Global Lane tonight at 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Still ahead, as gangs and drugs and violence make parts of America's inner cities like a war zone, we'll hear an encouraging answer about how to reclaim the broken lives in these areas.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
A living hell. That's what drugs, gangs, and violence make America's inner cities. And children suffer collateral damage. How do we reclaim these broken lives? Charlene Aaron brings us an encouraging answer.
Each week, rain or shine, this open field turns into something called Sidewalk Sunday School, complete with music, drama, and Bible stories. And each week, some 200 kids from the housing projects behind me show up to learn about God. It's all part of an outreach called Dallas Metro. Clay Wallace started the ministry 26 years ago.
The easiest way to reach people is to reach them in their neighborhood, on their turf. We have a 1-hour program, 1-hour fast-paced action program that communicates the gospel in a way they can understand.
Children from broken families, danger zones, and some of the city's poorest communities attend the weekly gatherings.
These kids all live in high-risk crime areas. Many of our kids have been abused, physically, emotionally, sexually.
The crime rate over here is incredibly high. Windows broken out, their doors kicked in.
Live music and practical skits are just a few ways the ministry helps to bring peace. Wallace says while methods may change, the message remains the same.
Our goal every week is we teach one verse to every child.
They teach it to where kids and adults can understand about Jesus Christ.
CBN News visited one of the 14 neighborhoods that hosts the Bible-based program each week.
It's one of our original locations when we started doing Sidewalk Sunday School. The truck that's behind me, the side actually opens up and it becomes a stage. There's a stage with legs. It's about 4 feet off the ground, and the kids sit on the ground on tarps, two blue tarps and a green tarp.
Operations Director James Musiaki says, while kids are the main focus, there's a fringe benefit.
We have parents that come out, and the cool thing is that not only do the parents come out, there's people that don't even have kids that come and just watch and they're part of the program because they are so drawn to the atmosphere that's here on this lot.
Due to growing needs, a teen program, weekly food distribution, summer camp, and holiday giveaways have been added.
You never dream that you have the opportunity to have impact on tens of thousands of kids' lives, and that's what's happened over the years.
Timothy Thomas is just one life transformed by the ministry. Growing up, his parents belonged to a gang, a path he says he was sure to follow.
I was a little hot-headed, if you could describe a worse teenager, that was me. The one thing that I heard from them that really stuck was, Jesus is your friend, and that you should be a friend of God.
Karina Thomas and her family often struggle to make ends meet. She says Dallas Metro was always there providing love and support.
They were out there every single week knocking on our door. And to some families, it can be kind of like, they're back, why are they always coming back? And they never gave up.
Now college graduates and married, Timothy and Karina serve together as youth and children pastors at the ministry.
I remember as a kid looking up at the teachers on the stage thinking, man, they have it all together. Like, they're so cool. They know Jesus. I wish I could be like them, and I'm able to pour back out what Jesus poured into me.
If it wasn't for Dallas Metro and if it wasn't for James and Pastor Clay just constantly being there, there's no telling where my life would end up. I would have followed what I called the neighborhood norm. Here's the neighborhood norm. You get out of high school, that's it. And if they weren't there, I probably would have did the same thing.
That constant connection led to a better life than he ever dreamed, something Thomas can now share with the new generation.
God has a purpose and a destiny for your life, and there's a way to get there, and you have to have a relationship with him.
Meanwhile, Wallace believes the last 2 decades of his ministry are just the foundation for the greater to come.
We have a new generation of leaders that God is raising up in our city, and I really believe this next generation is going to do far better, far exceeding anything that we have done the last 32 years.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Dallas.
Inspiring story. Coming up, you've heard the phrase separation of church and state, but a group of Christian activists have brought the message of the gospel to the center of government activity in America, Washington, D.C., with a live nativity scene. We'll show you what it looks like when we come back.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody,
escalating fight,
Jenna Browder,
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy,
plan to join him,
and Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
we get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
For some here in America, the separation of church and state means keeping all things God away from all things government. But this holiday season, a group of Christian activists is fighting to bring the story of Jesus' birth right to the center of the government action in Washington. Paul Strand brings us that story from our nation's capital.
Come on, fancy lady. See if you can get out without getting all the way out.
So why would a camel be hanging out on Capitol Hill? Well, it's not just for the fun of the tourist. There's actually a big point to be made here about your religious liberty rights. Each year, Christian activists fighting for those rights go between the U.S. Supreme Court and the U.S. Capitol to put on a live nativity scene, including baby Jesus and all the players gathered around his manger more than 2,000 years ago.
A lot of people forget it. Between the hustle, the bustle, all the stuff that goes, the politics on Capitol Hill, there's a reason that we do this. It's the reason for the season, and it's the birth of Jesus Christ.
Some might complain the specific location of this nativity scene violates the separation of church and state. Lawyer Matt Staver of the Liberty Counsel says it really doesn't.
There is no separation of church and state that requires the government to censor religious viewpoints in speech. And this is clearly the essential message of the Christmas season.
Our First Amendment right gives us the right to get permits and to hold different events on Capitol Hill, and our event happens to be our outreach, which is the live nativity.
Because he is the bread of life, heralded by the hosts of heaven.
Participants simply prayed, worshiped, and read from the Bible, nothing else.
We're not mixing politics in with this. We're not pushing any type of legislation. We're just letting you know what the true reason, the true time of the year is.
And to share that with not only people here in the nation's capital, but people around the world will be surprised as they see a live nativity in front of the United States Supreme Court.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Paul. That's it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com, or you can talk to us on Facebook and Twitter. From all of us here, have a great day, guys.